right. And for our non-youth, I'll say anybody that comes up gets a treat. Love it. Oh my goodness. Congregation, it's been a couple of months. It is really good to see. I'm fresh back from sabbatical, as I think many of you know. Was able to spend a week at a seminarian friend's cabin in Wisconsin, lakeside. There was plumbing and there was electricity. There was no internet, no phone, and just sat by the water and read for a week. That was fantastic. And then not too long ago, got back from a 5,000-mile road trip. Went through parts of California, Colorado first, then California, and then down south a little bit. Was able to be part of the church-wide assembly, decision-making body of the ELCA down in Phoenix for 5 days, and then hopped on Route 66. Show of hands, who here has ever been on part of Route 66? So cool, right? Much of the road is still there. There's history. It's a slow road to take, and the experience is actually not the destination. It's just going along the way. So it was a wonderful trip. It is good to be back among you. Thank you, Pastor Stephanie and Pastor AJ. All I asked them was not to burn the place down, so mission accomplished. So when I was up in Ames, my clergy colleague had a sabbatical. He came back, and he tells me Sunday morning, he's like, I haven't done this preaching thing in a while, so I'm kind of worried about how it's going to go. So he said, I just ended up saying Jesus a lot. So let me know how it goes. And I found myself counting during his sermon. Pastor Brian said it 34 times. And I went to him afterwards, well, I think you did okay. So this has some Jesus in it. You can count if you like. I don't think the number's quite 34. Please pray for me. I'm a little bit rusty. We'll see how this goes. 2 days ago on Friday, Grim and I took a short field trip to the Jordan House. With the Des Moines Public Schools starting up, oh my gosh, tomorrow, it was our chance to get in just a bit more of some summertime fun. The house, built in 1850, is part of the National Register of Historic Places. It was the residence of James and Melinda Jordan, the earliest settlers of the Walnut Township. These days, the area is better known simply as, anyone know? West Des Moines. This was West Des Moines. During the guided tour, we enjoyed learning and exploring every nook and cranny of the Victorian home that we could. We went through the whole thing. It was an hour-and-a-half tour. The house is opulent, featuring vaulted ceilings, 16 rooms. This is a big house. And amazingly, at least for a 175-year-old home, a limestone basement that does not leak. It was impressive. The Jordans had 11 children, and before an addition, many of them slept in just a few of the rooms. During the tour, Graham pulled me aside and asked, "You mean I'd have to sleep with 3 or 4 other kids in the same room?" I nodded, and he paused and thought about it. Oh, try this? Okay. Hello, hello. All right. I nodded. He paused as he thought about it, and he goes, "That'd be a lot." We loved the penny farthing bicycles they had on display. Who here knows what a penny farthing bicycle is? That's the one with the really big wheel up front and the really tiny one in the back, popular in the 1880s. I don't know how you don't fall and get significant injuries off those things, but it was really fun to look at. Graham found himself drawn to the sizable geode collection upstairs. He, too, is a rock collector. We both gawked at the Amethyst Cathedral geode from Brazil. Look at that, at a foot tall, all the purple crystals just shined all the way through. It couldn't help but amaze. We learned, too, that the original owner, James Jordan, was a successful farmer, active as a livestock dealer and a bank director. Even more, he belonged to the Republican Party and for many years served in the Iowa Senate, later the Iowa House of Representatives. From what we saw of the house, the family furniture, and knew of his many vocations, by all accounts, at least from what we could tell, James Jordan had lived the American dream. Given his success and social standing, it might surprise you then to learn that James Jordan had a secret life, a life only a few people knew of for a while. James Jordan was a criminal. There was one crime in particular he kept doing again and again and again. In 1950, amid rising tensions between northern and southern states, the U.S. Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act. This law made it illegal to aid a slave escaping to the north or Canada to be free. As a devout Methodist, Jordan believed that participating in slavery burdens your soul. I love that phrase, participating in slavery burdens your soul. But for him, this went beyond mere belief. Jordan often spoke up and out vehemently against it. For Jordan, this too went way beyond mere words. For he opened his home and property to escaped slaves from the south heading north. Jordan Home, which is also on the National Underground Railroad network to freedom, was an essential stop along the way. Jordan knew he was breaking the law, and he knew the consequences. Providing food or shelter to escaped slaves was punishable by up to 6 months in prison, no small thing. Breaking this law also came with it a $1,000 fine per slave, which is about $38,000 today. That's a pretty good deterrent. Why $1,000? Seems like a nice round number. Because that was the market value at the time for a slave. Think about that for a second. With his lawbreaking, Jordan risked both his finances and his freedom. With his lawbreaking, Jordan knew there could be great personal cost. But you know what? None of that stopped him. He did it anyway. In 1991, Arnold Abbott began feeding the homeless on the beaches of Fort Lauderdale. Doing so was illegal. There were laws and ordinances against it. He was told it was not what proper citizens should do. The city demanded that he stop. Abbott continued. He and his volunteers had the right to feed the homeless, they replied. They only wanted to eat on the beach, like anyone else. After years of tussles with authorities in 2000, Abbott successfully sued the city. Feeding the homeless was his religious right, Abbott reasoned. The local religious studies professor that testified in the trial argued all major world religions require charity to the poor. The court agreed. Abbott, who ironically is Jewish, said he was simply following the teachings of Jesus. Well, that ruling settled things for a while. Of course, it's never quite done, right? In 2014, the tides turned again. Fort Lauderdale passed another ordinance, putting even more requirements on feeding the homeless. Now, portable toilets had to be available. And if they weren't, well, it was going to cost you. You could face significant fines or up to 60 days in jail. The city of Fort Lauderdale was not playing around. Abbott, a World War II veteran with a growing arrest record, multiple fines that kept piling up, multiple lawsuits he was involved in, then received news of another sort. He'd received an award from the Miami Herald. He actually received lots of awards. The Herald says this: "No other South Floridian's humanitarian spirit made bigger headlines than that of 90-year-old Arnold Abbott." No relation, that's a first name. The veteran do-gooder fought the city of Fort Lauderdale for the right to feed the city's homeless, despite a new restrictive ordinance. For Abbott to still have the gumption to fight City Hall is nothing less than inspirational. Unquote. Worried about the negative publicity Fort Lauderdale was getting, the city simply stopped enforcing the law. When Abbott died 5 years later in 2019 at the age of 94, he was still breaking city ordinances each and every day. He never stopped. Over the course of his lifetime, he served hundreds of thousands of meals illegally to those without enough to eat. Abbott risked both his finances and freedom. Abbott knew there would be great personal cost. But you know what? None of that stopped him. He did it anyway. 2 millennia ago, a rabbi taught in the synagogue on Saturday. As he spoke, a woman appeared who had been crippled for 18 years. Many modern biblical scholars believe the woman had a condition that fused the bones in her spine. As a result, the woman experienced stiffness, inflammation, fatigue, acute pain, a lot of acute pain. Jesus, of course, couldn't help but feel compassion for her. He knew she faced two types of pain: the physical pain, sure, of having a debilitating condition, but also the pain of social isolation from a society who judged her for it and had for 18 years. Jesus knew what to do. It was all part of the plan. And he knew too, there were laws against doing anything that could be considered work on the Sabbath. Already a well-known lawbreaker at this point, Jesus is well aware of what was at stake. Christ risked both reputation and freedom. He knew ultimately there would be great personal costs. But you know what? None of that stopped him. None of that stopped him. He did it anyway. Jesus called the woman over, laid hands on her. Immediately, she stood up straight. The woman had been healed. The synagogue leader, always intent on nailing Jesus for any rule breaking he could, called Christ out for it. That's always what goes on. Jesus answered the critique clearly, calling those gathered that day hypocrites. He pointed out that each of them untie their animals and lead them to water on the Sabbath. That helps them, right? That's part of their economy. Ought not this woman who has been ill for 18 years, ought not this woman be set free from her bondage on the Sabbath day too? Are you going to prioritize your own interests over healing a fellow child of God? When Jesus said this, the entire crowd rejoiced at all the wonderful things the Messiah had said and done. Martin Luther King Jr., writing a letter to fellow clergy from the Birmingham City Jail in April of 1963, when asked about his law-breaking, and yeah, Martin Luther King Jr. did some law-breaking, eloquently responded with this. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? There are two types of laws: just laws and unjust laws. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws, King Jr. says. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Let me repeat that. One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. King continues. One who breaks an unjust law must do it openly, lovingly, and with a willingness to accept the penalty. An individual who breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust and willingly accepts the penalty by staying in jail to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the very highest respect for the law. Unquote. People of God, know this. The time may come when you're faced with the dilemma whether or not to follow an unjust law. When that time comes, I ask you to take your cue from James Jordan or Arnold Abbott or Martin Luther King Jr. Know the risks. Count the costs. prepare for consequences. As they were, we too are called to be like Christ. You know what? Don't let it stop you. Do it anyway.